Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a massive paradigm shift that's literally unfolding in video game design as we speak. We're looking at the intense cultural friction it's causing across the whole gaming community. Basically, we're standing dead center at the crossroads of a huge technological dream and a really messy consumer reality.
So let's dive right in. What if the NPCs, the non-playable characters in your favorite game, actually had a life of their own? What if they could remember things, reflect on them, and actually make plans? For decades, we've been interacting with these static characters who just parrot the exact same 3 lines of dialogue. But today, the tech actually exists to change that completely.
But hey, before we get completely lost in this utopian future of gaming, we've got to look at the reality on the ground right now. On platforms like Steam, gamers are actively pushing back against what they're calling AI slop. They feel like instead of revolutionizing how we play, AI is currently just being used to flood the market and completely bury hardworking independent developers. So how on earth did we get here?
Section 1. The end of scripted NPCs, moving from code to cognition. To really get the dream of game devs who want to move way past static characters, just look at Ubisoft. At a recent game developers conference, their Paris studio unveiled this incredible AI NPCs project. It's a generative AI prototype built to show off entirely unscripted dialogue and real-time emotions. Instead of clicking through a rigid dialogue tree, you actually use your own voice to chat with these characters, and they react, they plan actions, and they even generate brand new quests on the fly based on what you just said.
Now, what's genuinely fascinating to me here are the human stakes for the actual writers. Virginie Mosser, a narrative director on the project, pointed out that her work has gotten incredibly deep. Rather than mapping out branching scripts, writers are now building complex psychological profiles, backstories, and secret agendas. They literally have to give these models a soul. That way, when the AI takes the wheel, the character stays totally consistent and believable.
Section 2. Simulating a Human Society. The work of Jun-Sung Park. To understand how developers actually give these characters a functional soul, we've got to look at computer scientist Jun-Sung Park from Stanford University. He introduced this vital concept called generative agents. And listen, these are not just your standard chatbots. They are interactive simulacra of human behavior. Language model-based actors packed with memory, reflection, and planning. They don't just react to a prompt. They remember what you said yesterday, think about what it means, and plan their next moves.
And here's the kicker. This isn't just theory anymore. Park's research has scaled up in a massive way. He's actually run population-scale simulations featuring a bank of 1,000 generative agents, all designed to act like real people with complex attitudes and behaviors. 1,000. It basically proves you can run an entire sprawling digital society that acts totally human.
Section 3. Giving AI agents memories. The E-mem framework.
Okay, to act like a real person, an AI agent really needs what's called System 2 reasoning, basically deliberative, high-precision problem-solving. Think about it. If an NPC promises to meet you at the tavern tomorrow because of a secret you whispered to them yesterday, they absolutely have to maintain that logical integrity. Older AI just couldn't do this well. They suffered from something called decontextualization. It's kind of like squishing a perfectly good sandwich into a blender. It compresses the memory so much that the AI completely loses the vital context it needs to reason.
But researchers are finally cracking this with something called E-mem, or episodic context reconstruction. Instead of compressing memories, E-mem actually takes inspiration from biological engrams. You know, how the human brain actually works? It sets up a hierarchy, where a central master agent handles the planning, while a bunch of assistant agents actively re-experience raw memory contexts. So instead of just blindly pulling a compressed chunk of text, the AI actively reasons inside its own restored memories.
And what about the financial reality that makes this actually viable for major studios? 70%. Yep, the MM framework doesn't just make the logical reasoning better, it slashes token costs by over 70% compared to older state-of-the-art models. That cheaper, smarter memory is exactly the tipping point needed to get this tech out of the lab and into actual retail games.
Section 4. The AI slop backlash. The reality on Steam.
All right, so we have the mind-blowing tech and the developer's dream, but now we crash headfirst into the consumer reality. If you check out the discussions on Reddit during events like Steam's Next Fest, gamers are pushing back, and they're pushing back hard. Their grievances are super specific. They feel like the market is just being flooded with generic, low-effort AI asset flips. The big fear here is that the algorithmic sorting on these storefronts pushes these hastily made games right to the top, completely drowning out the actual indie devs who spent literally years handcrafting original games.
As an observer, it's wild to see that players have actually developed their own shared vocabulary to fight this. Take the term Balenciaga faces, for example. The community uses this to describe a very specific, overly chiseled, totally expressionless look, kind of like a high-fashion robot, right? It's become this dead giveaway for AI-generated art. Gamers are actively training themselves to spot lazy generation from a mile away and reject it instantly.
Section 5. Tools versus replacements. The community debate.
This whole backlash really highlights a fierce, ongoing debate about what AI's role in game development should actually be. On one side, you have this completely valid frustration that automated generation is just burying traditional hard work. For these players, AI isn't making games better, it's just a shortcut for opportunists to churn out volume over quality, which pushes passionate, small teams completely out of the spotlight.
But then, right on the other side, defenders argue that AI is just a new tool. They say it's going through the exact same growing pains that the Unity engine did years ago. Remember when Unity made prefab digital assets cheap and easy to use? Storefronts got flooded with asset flips, low-quality games coggled together from pre-bought models. The argument here is that the tool itself isn't inherently bad. It's just in a phase where it's being heavily exploited.
The real nuance here is figuring out where assistance ends and total replacement begins. Using an AI tool to help figure out a tricky two-line coding bug for a loading screen, that is vastly different from generating the text, the dialogue, the art, and the code in their entirety just by feeding a vague prompt to an AI, especially when there is zero quality control or human curation applied afterward.
Section 6. The future of play. Synthesizing tech and art.
So, looking at everything we've covered today, how does the industry actually move forward and deliver on these huge promises? Well, the future of play is going to require a really delicate balance. It means taking advanced cognitive tech, like that cost-effective E-mem framework we talked about, and combining it with complex societal models, like Jun-Sung Park's generative agents. But crucially, all of this raw computational power absolutely must be guided by rigorous human-driven artistic curation. Think of those narrative directors at Ubisoft ensuring every character actually has a psychological profile. And finally, storefronts are going to need strong community filtering to ensure quality control, rewarding genuine human effort over just algorithmic output.
I want to leave you with this final thought to chew on the next time you log in to explore a game world. What will we actually demand from our digital realities? Are we going to embrace AI to make our games infinitely immersive, full of characters with actual soul and memory? Or are we going to settle for games that are just infinitely generic? The technology is absolutely here, but how we use it? Well, that's entirely up to the creators and the community. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.